All right. Good evening, Cowboys, Cowgirls, and Outlaws. Welcome to our gunfighter talk for Slick Six Guns. Today, I have the famed Duke Frazier Productions. So, thank you for being on, Duke.
Sure.
It's we've had a talk about getting you on the show, and we're glad to have you. I know that the last couple live streams we've had together with 11 Bang Bang, it was kind of just all of us, and now it's actually just you and me. So that's pretty
Right.
good. Everybody who's watching, just go ahead and say hi in the comments, and as always, there's a link in the description for Duke Frazier's channel. So go ahead and join him. He is a fellow Western shootist, and he's into black powder and stuff like that. And feel free to subscribe to his channel if that's what you're interested in. Duke, is there anything you would like to say before we get started about your channel?
It's kind of moving more towards the shorts things because that's the way things are, and it's a lot easier to produce that stuff. But other than that, yeah, it's just black powder, history, leatherwork, the basics.
Gotcha. Awesome. Well, why don't you go ahead and tell me about your background? Like, how did you, how old are you, if you care to say that, and tell us what you did before you did YouTube?
You think I get asked this question enough? I can remember how old I am. I'm somewhere between 33 and 34. Actually, I get asked that, and I have to stop and think about it because I quit counting them after 21.
Yeah.
33. Actually, everybody thinks I'm a historian by education. I'm actually a geologist. Focuses in paleontology and petroleum.
Okay.
But that was one of those things. I graduated and the oil market went to heck back in 2015, and I never got a job in that field. So I had a job already, a summer job as a living historian is what they call us, basically a reenactor, and stuck with that, and that's what I've been doing ever since.
Awesome. Well, where'd you graduate from, obviously?
South Dakota School of Mines and Technology.
And are you still in South Dakota?
No. I used to go up there. I haven't been to South Dakota for a couple of years now. I used to work on a ranch up there in the wintertime, and I did that when I was in college. And then after I graduated, I kept doing that because my history job was just about 6 months out of the year. So I'd save up my money, kind of try to live through the winter as long as I could, and then head up to South Dakota, which usually that's always in the worst of the winter is when I would wind up heading up there, and then work up there for a few months and then come back home and start over again. But after about 4 back-to-back nasty winters up there, I got tired of it, and it finally got to me, and I was like, you know what, I need to find something else to do.
Gotcha. So why geology? What was your original interest there?
It was my general first interest was paleontology, because I was into dinosaurs and such. At least I thought I was at the time. And what kind of got me started on that is, found a few fossils when I was younger, and I got introduced to a paleontologist over it, and he gave me this book on Charles Sternberg. And Sternberg had been out and got started doing paleontology, 1870s, 1880s through the early 1900s. And, I read all that, and it just intrigued me. And, always thought it was kind of the paleo portion that intrigued me. But, looking back now, it was more of the history, that firsthand account of history, that is what really caught my eye. Anyway, I wound up going to college for 6 years for that. And I was going to go for the PhD. I wanted to be a professor at a university for paleontology. And I realized by the time I got that PhD, I'd be so far in debt that I'd never pay it off. So I was like, you know what? The last 2 years I was in college, I said, I'm going to take petroleum and go work in the oil fields, have everything paid off. And then if I want to go back and try it again, maybe I won't be in such a mess. And there's Al Swearingen quote from Deadwood where he said, announcing your plans is a good way to hear God laugh. And he's been laughing at me for the last, 7 years.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting how all the backgrounds I'm seeing of all these different YouTubers, they had no idea that they were going to do YouTube, and you know, I had no idea that they'd be interested in other things than Western stuff. So that's kind of cool though. But yeah, it definitely takes a turn, you know?
Yep. And the love for the Western history has always been there. When I was a little kid, I grew up on John Wayne, Jimmy Stewart, Gary Cooper, all those good old movies. But it took me, getting that summer job as that living historian to really have it kick in. And then it's like, this is what I want to do for the rest of my life.
Uh-huh.
And the rest of it just kind of grew out of that.
Gotcha. So why did you end up choosing the channel name of Duke Frazier Productions? Obviously, your name is Duke. That is your real name, correct?
Yeah. Well, it's not my given name, but it's a name I've gone by for a long time.
Okay.
Since I was, probably 12, 13 years old. The whole channel name, it used to be just Duke Frazier. That was my channel name. And then somebody said, well, you ought to change that and come up with something more catchy. And I thought about it for a long time. I was like, I was watching some Western movie, and the guy that made it used his first and last name and put Productions at the end of it. I was like, well, that makes it seem more professional. So that's how Duke Frazier Productions came about. And then I actually thought about changing it, and it's kind of a funny story. Most people that follow me, and you probably follow Guns of the West, Dustin Weiniger.
Yeah.
There, when I was really producing videos, the long content videos, Dustin and I would put out a video, and usually it was a toss-up of who had the idea first, but we was basically putting out the same content every week. So he'd do a video and I'd have one right on the heels of that, or I'd do one and, vice versa. And so it was like back and forth for about a year. And I finally decided, I'm going to change the name of my channel. I've not told Dustin this one yet, but it's like, I'm going to change it and name my channel. I said, I think I'm going to call it Guns in the West. I look on YouTube and Dustin changes it to Guns of the West.
Oh,
I was like, well, there went that idea.
Yeah. No, the typical someone comes up with that idea and then they steal it from you before you can implement it. That's great.
But it's like on the creative side of things, Dustin and I were there for a long time. We was on about the same brainwave.
So you do you keep in touch with Dustin? You talk to him quite often?
Yeah, I chat with him from time to time. Because he's busy with his family stuff and I'm busy with mine. But I stay in contact with him and Santee because the three of us really kind of got things rolling about the same time, which would have been probably about 2016, if I was to remember off the top of my head, when I really got started back into doing YouTube strong. And those two, their channels just went wild. We all kind of got rolling together. I remember Santee started commenting on my channel. Dustin started commenting on my channel, and that's kind of how I discovered them. And all grew from there. They're great friends, and love working with them when I can.
Yeah, no, I didn't know you guys got started at the same time. I didn't really even know you guys really knew each other for a while. So, here we are, all these Western content creators, creating all this stuff, kind of independent of each other. And then it wasn't until the 11 Bang Bang channel that I started seeing that. But I think you and I were on, I forgot the guy's name. Do you remember? He was a smaller YouTuber.
Is it Jeremy?
Jeremy Gunslinger.
Yeah, Jeremy Gunslinger. Yeah. God, that's been a long time ago.
Yeah.
We probably were on one of those because he had quite a few of those. But to be honest, it's been so far back, I can't remember who all I was on chats with him on there.
Yeah, but I mean, that was one of the first. I think that was the first time I saw you.
Okay.
And then I started looking at some of your long form content. So that was about 2018 timeframe. So
yeah,
you'd been on for about 2 years.
Yeah, and really, I got my first start because I've actually had two channels. The first one, I used my school-associated Gmail account, and when I graduated, they deleted that, so I lost that channel. So that's when I started this second channel. I really 2016 is when I really got going strong, and by 2018 things were rolling pretty good. And then 2019 come around, and that wasn't a real good summer for me. And then 2020 happened. We all know what happened there.
Yeah.
But yeah, 2018, I think that was probably the last year I really filmed a lot of stuff was in 2018.
Okay.
Because in 2019, it was just kind of, I was fed up. I was fed up with the world at that point. But yeah, I wasn't doing a lot of stuff after 2019 for the long format content. But that's when I kind of started doing more live streams and stuff too, because it's like, it's less stress to do a live stream.
Yeah, it is. I agree with you.
I jump on here, I talk for an hour. It's like doing a long format video for a 10, 15 minute video. It's like 4 hours at the gun range, 4 hours editing, and then takes 4 hours to upload.
Yeah, I try to tell people that it's not as, people kind of have this this idea of what a YouTuber is, that we just don't work at all or nothing. The fact is, it's like we got day jobs, and then we come home, we work on what you want, and by the time you see the finished product, we've already put probably 20 hours to 40 in,
Exactly. And that was the other kind of joke of the productions part, is because I got to where I was producing videos as fast as I could, and it still took a lot of work. But the thing that kind of got me away from that is like, I wasn't getting that much in return from it. And it was becoming a second job. It was taking me away from the family and stuff. And it's like, I finally kind of got fed up. And that's when I got into doing like leather and stuff, because at least with leather, it was a self-sustaining hobby. And every once in a while I did enough that I'd have a little extra pocket change. I'd go buy a soda or something.
So are you, so I got two questions with that. First off, your first YouTube channel, were you monetized before they deleted it?
No, I had not even bothered with that. I didn't start monetizing until I put it off as long as I could. The reason I started monetizing is I decided I was going to produce a video every week for a year. And after going to the gun range about 4 days in a row and burning up black powder, and I calculated up how much I'd burnt, I realized that was not going to pay for itself. And so I monetized, and I thought, I'll make enough money, because a lot of my other friends were monetizing and paying for their ammo. And I got the short end of that stick. It took 2 years for me to get a payout from YouTube.
Really? That long?
And it wasn't that they were delayed in paying it out. It took that long to make enough to meet the minimum mark for the payout, which is $100. So I wasn't making a bunch. That's
insane. Are you monetized now?
Yeah, I'm monetized now, and you're not supposed. I guess we're not supposed to discuss how much we get paid on YouTube, but I will say that things haven't changed much.
Okay. Yeah.
I still don't make a lot on it.
Has the shorts helped you out? I got my own opinions on that one, but
so I haven't noticed much change with the shorts. When it comes to money making, the thing that I noticed since they monetized it is the views on my shorts plummeted. So I had one short on there. It was on, doing the couple things with the Winchester 97. I had the one that you do the puke of the shells out, which I think that's your biggest viewed short too.
Not that you gave me any ideas.
Well, I think yours was out before mine. So
actually, we came out right at the same time. What happened was,
okay.
That day I saw your video, and then I started looking up. What people were making on it, and I found another guy that was doing it, and he had like 5 million. No, he had 1 million views on it. I'm like, okay, so I can definitely do something with this.
Right. Well, I decided to do 3 of them that day, just kind of 3 little things with that one. And that one was the first, doing the speed dump. The second one was how the pump lock worked. And the third one was the takedown. And the one where he dumped the shells, that one had the most views. I mean, it jumped big, and I thought, oh, this is going to be great. It's going to get a lot of views. And the last one was getting a bunch of views, but that one in the middle just wasn't doing anything at all. It got to like 1,000 views and just quit. I was like, okay, 2 out of 3, that's not bad. And about 2 weeks later, Garrett gives me a call. And he says, congratulations, you got 40,000 views on a short. I'm like, really? Which one? And I looked at it and I was like, holy crap, the last time I looked at it, it was 1,000 views. And that thing skyrocketed.
Yeah.
But as soon as they did that monetization, what was it, February 1st, dropped. It was going to hit 500,000 views, and it hit 465,000. And I just checked it before I come on here, and it was 469.
Okay.
So it really dropped off. And you can go in there in analytics, and you can see what day it slacked.
Yeah. Yeah, this I think the shorts are great for getting people, but they really don't do well on monetization from what I've seen.
No, and Garrett, he kind of keeps track of that stuff better than I do. I just kind of put it out there and I figure out I'll get what I can out of it. It's just for fun, for something to kill time with. But I can tell you from what I've seen on the last few long content videos I put out is the long content's on its way out.
Okay.
Because I did a video. I went out and visited Garrett and Ethan and them there. Oh, God, I don't even remember when it was now. It was in January, I think. And filmed a bunch of videos. And I filmed one for the Henry that I just got. And went out there and, spent a whole day shooting, a whole day editing that thing. I uploaded it. It got 500 views in the first day, and it hasn't done anything since.
Yeah. What inspired you to get that Henry?
It come down to one of my viewers, and getting to be a pretty good friend. He reached out to me because I had a Sharps, a Patterson Sharps 4570, and that thing was getting too expensive to shoot. Couldn't find the ammo for it, and it's one that's rated for black powder, so you can't shoot anything hotter than cowboy loads out of it. So I just wasn't shooting it. It was becoming a safe queen. And the one that I bought was a hunter model because I thought about getting into shooting competitions with it. And so it had the pistol grip and the shotgun butt plate. Well, I never got into the shooting, but I thought, I'll use it for living history. The problem is that you didn't see Sharps with that particular configuration that much out here in the West. That was more of what was going on over at Creedmoor with the shooting competitions back in the East. And so I just kind of set in the safe, and it was getting to become a safe queen. And that fellow reached out to me and offered a trade for a 1860 Henry and straight across trade. And I looked up the price of the Henry, and I looked up what the current price of the Sharps was, and I thought, that's pretty darn even. And I hated to do it because that Sharps was what I got myself for graduating college. It was my graduation present to myself. My family was poor enough, was too poor to get me anything. So I thought about it long and hard, and I thought, I get a lot more use out of the Henry with living history than I was getting out of the Sharps. And so I traded it off. And it's one of those things that, I kind of have mixed emotions about it. I'm glad I got the Henry, but there's times I miss my Sharps. But the thing is I'll get a lot more use out of the Henry.
Gotcha. Yeah. Well, for a minute there, I thought when you say you had your good friend, I thought you were going to talk about me there. So my good friend Slick inspired me because he says he keeps talking about his Henry and all this. I would have been quite down to earth on that one. But
I have been thinking about a Henry for a long time. And where I work up out at Fort Laramie in Wyoming, I do living history up there. I checked out the Henry one year when I was starting my scout impression. They let me check out the Henry and carry it around. I played around with it, and I was like, yeah, this is nice. I said, but I'd really like to have a 66. That's the one I really wanted to have.
Yeah.
And I had an opportunity to buy a 66, but I was waiting to start my new job because that one was paying quite a bit more than what I was making at the time. I thought, that won't sell. I'll just wait and I'll get the 66. And I told one of my buddies at work about it, and that's the last time I'll ever tell one of my gun buying friends about a good deal on a gun, because that SOB bought that gun the next day out from under me. And then I was stupid enough to tell him what they had a good deal on a 73 Winchester, because that was my next one I was going to buy. And he bought that one the next day.
Oh, no.
So he bought 2 guns out from underneath me in 2 days.
Jeez, man.
So, so when this opportunity came up for a Henry, I thought, it's not a 66, but I'll take it. And it was in 45 Colt, which I'm kind of getting to the point where it's like 45 Colt is going to be my caliber. When that came up, it's like, I'm going to take it.
Gotcha. Yeah. Well, is he still your friend anymore?
Oh, yeah. Him and I text back and forth. He's another history buff, so we're always texting back and forth on historical stuff. But he was wanting to use it for a buffalo hunt, and then he wound up using a different one. But I'm hoping he does use that on a buffalo hunt here before too long, because I'd like to see that gun and know that gun got a buffalo in its day.
Yeah. No, that'd be a tale to tell, but. Just to tell the audience here, if you guys have any questions, put them in the comments section. We'll bring them up. We got a Q&A at the end of our questioning here of Duke, or my questioning, I should say. So drum them up in your head and then put them in the comments. We'll bring them on screen. With that being said, tell me a little bit about your leatherwork business. What would you like to tell everyone about that?
Oh, man. Yeah, I've been doing that for a while. It's been focused a lot on historical holsters. And what that comes down to is I wanted to have a holster for every gun that I owned, revolver, or a handgun, I should say. And I calculated up how much it was going to be, and I figured it would take me about 10 years to do it. And then I got thinking, I'm pretty good at making stuff. I could order some leather and make my own holsters. And I'd done that one time before, and I still have that first holster I ever made sitting around here somewhere. It's the most atrocious thing you ever saw. I think a Boy Scout with a hatchet could have done a better job. But I started watching some videos on YouTube of how to make holsters and stuff. And I thought, it ain't all that bad. And a friend of mine that's a fellow reenactor, I posted on Facebook about, looking for some holster patterns from my other reenactor friends. And he said, well, what do you need? And I told him, and he says, okay. He says, I'll send you a few free patterns. And so he sent me the patterns, and I made a couple holsters, and I don't remember who it was, but somebody in my family said, well, you ought to make those and sell them. I thought, that's not a bad idea. I can make these decent enough. So I made a few, and some of those early ones, they were serviceable. They weren't pretty by any means. But I sold a few, and then I sold a few more, and then I sold a few more. And then I was like, well, heck, get a little extra money out of this. I could turn at the time I was paying $40 a hide for a double shoulder from Tandy. And it's like, I could make $400 out of that double shoulder. And, so I just kept on doing it, and it just kept on growing, and it's still a side gig, but it's turned into a pretty nice little business. And here lately, I've been trying to expand that out into other things. I just got a bunch of patterns, and I'm going to try to start making some pistol caddies, or basically little leather carriers that you zip up and you carry your gun in. I got a jewelry box pattern that I was kind of got intrigued. It was real fun to look at, and it was lined with velvet. My grandmother's got 2 apple boxes full of velvet laying around that we were just going to throw out at some point anyway. So I was like, well, start making that stuff, see if I can make some more money.
Okay.
So, yeah, it's just been growing, just trying to grow it. Eventually, I'd like to get to the point where when I retire, I'll have a nice business to run just to make a little extra money.
Awesome.
But
that's great. And tell me a little bit about who your customers are, your clients. Like, who have they been? Any big names?
Not real big names. The biggest customer I got is the 11 Bang Bang channel. I think they've bought most of my holsters. They're definitely close to at least half of all the holsters I've ever made.
Okay.
and I'm thankful for them. They've given me a lot of business, and they'll probably continue to give me a lot of business. But yeah, I made them. Santee's got a couple of mine. Dustin's got a few of mine. Some of the other YouTubers out there. Squibload's got a few. They get around out there. Mark Hubbs has one of mine. I sent him one because he sent me a bullet mold for doing videos promoting his bullet molds, and I thought, I was like, I didn't do all that much.
Yeah.
And so I was like, I'll send him a holster. So I sent him a 49 pocket model holster that it was one of the first ones I had made. It was a prototype that turned out perfect the first time. So I sent that one to him. But yeah, and at one point in time, there was a film company that reached out to me for a contract on holsters, but that movie must have never happened because I never heard anything back from them.
Gotcha. Okay. Well, that's good. No, glad to see that you're contributing to that. And I think if you keep doing that, I don't know if you know, but I know that SASS on their magazines, they actually ask for advertisers, people to advertise if they're specific to the Western shooting sports.
Right.
So is that something you've thought of or know of, or?
I've thought about paying into advertising, but it's one of those things that I'm at a point in the business where I'm happy because I can do my full-time job, and the holster, I get behind a lot on holster orders because I do it as a side gig. And it's like I tell folks, it's one of those things that I've got just enough orders that would require me to quit my full-time job, but not enough orders to pay the bills if I was to do that.
Got it.
So it's like if I drum up any more business, it's going to have to require some bigger investments like a sewing machine and that kind of stuff, which planning on doing that here at some point. But the other thing is with doing the seasonal jobs and back and forth and never knowing where you're going to be at in 6 months, don't want to get too big because then it gets harder to move.
Right. Exactly. Well, you gotta spend money to make money.
Yep.
Being a business owner myself, I know exactly what you're going through with that. And we just started up. So, we started up last year. So this is our second year in business. So, like I said,
and right now the business is happy. It's
yeah.
Definitely got growing strains, but it's happy.
Yeah. Yeah. I think the best thing about having a business is working for yourself. You don't really have a boss. So you are your boss, but if you don't make profits, it's kind of sucks, but at the same time it's like, right. Oh, I get to show up to work looking however I look and stuff.
Yeah. And you kind of make your own hours. I know there's been days where, a friend of mine told me that I needed to take a break because back in November, I was going 12, 16 hours a day nonstop. It got to where my hands were just constant. I couldn't straighten my fingers out because I was doing so much stitching and pulling on the needles that my fingers were locked in. So it's like, yeah, sometimes it gets to be a bit much.
Well, we're glad to have you doing that. We always look for new leather makers. So if you guys are into SASS, get in touch with Duke Frazier here. He can help you out. I know that he's got an order on me for back order right now, and
yeah.
we're talking about getting done. So he can do it, folks. Make sure you get in touch with him.
Like I said, trying to expand some stuff out on the business. Most of it is historic holsters. My number one seller, and actually it's dropped off. I haven't had too many orders for it, but it used to be the Bohannon holster when Hell on Wheels was on Netflix. I was selling a lot of Bohannon holsters.
Yeah.
Netflix took it off.
That's great. That's great. Yeah, I'm sure Snapper probably bought one of those holsters too, or thought.
Yeah, he did.
Oh, he probably puts his Griswold in it.
Yep. He got one. I think Dustin has one. Squibload has one. There's a lot of people have them. That was, I think, besides the Slim Jim holster for 51 Navies, that was my most popular holster for a long time.
Awesome. No, good to hear. What kind of getting off of that, but still staying on YouTube. why did you choose YouTube as a platform to promote yourself and promote your business instead of going to, say, Instagram or Facebook?
Well, I tried to do all three, but YouTube is kind of the easiest to run, and it had the most broad reach, I guess you could say. I do run an Instagram for my holster page. I've also got my private page I run on there, and the private page is was set up more for the YouTube videos, and then the holster page is for the leather. But I just use the main one kind of as a private thing. But yeah, most of the orders that I've gotten, I'd have to say all the orders I've gotten from people they came from watching videos on YouTube about it, either mine or somebody else's. And I got to give thanks to Dustin and Santee. Them two guys have brought me quite a bit of business.
Awesome.
And so, I'm very thankful they helped me out on that one. But yeah, it's just YouTube was the broadest reach. Because Instagram, I don't know how the things work over there on Instagram, but I can post a picture and it might get 10, 15 likes. But if I post a video on YouTube, in theory, it could get, a million views in a day.
Mm-hmm.
But that hasn't been working real well.
Yeah, no, I'd have to say for when I first started out, I was posting on Facebook, Instagram, everywhere just for people to get eyes on. And then I think once YouTube started making shorts was when I got rid of that, because I realized shorts was bringing in so many views. It was like, there's no need, doesn't compare.
Right. And I haven't done much on Facebook. I take orders through folks on Facebook. They'll send me a message on there, and I'll take orders through that. But the Instagram, the reason I keep posting over there is that's my portfolio of what I can make. Because people always ask me, well, where's your website? We'd like to scroll through and see what you got to kind of order. And it's like, go over to Instagram. That's where all the pictures are. Or tell me what, gun you're wanting it for, and I can send the pictures to you.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, that's the big thing on Instagram is my page where you can go through, scroll through them, and you can see what you want, and or we can modify it from there if need be.
Awesome. Well, you talked a little bit about movies and stuff, John Wayne, and kind of got you into the Old West, but are there any other reasons why you're interested in the Old West in particular?
Just was simpler time in our history, but I think it definitely, the Western movies was what got me, because the first movie that I can remember watching as a kid was The Sons of Katie Elder. And that one, and El Dorado and Big Jake. And El Dorado, I can pretty much quote to you word for word. That's how many times I've seen that one. And so, yeah, and we always played Cowboys and Indians as kids. So I guess, with that interest was always there. And my family, I've done a little research there. It's like my family really didn't do much out in the West. The furthest west my family has ever gotten, the direct line was Colorado. And
Okay.
yeah, of course I've had cousins and stuff, they're out further west. But yeah, you could trace my family from South Carolina and follow the Cotton Belt all the way around. Then after the Civil War, they make it to the Oklahoma and the Indian Nations, and they marry in with the Cherokees, and they stay there until the 1930s, and then they come to Colorado.
Gotcha. Awesome.
So I don't know, just the like I said, the movies is probably the number one thing that got me interested in the Western history.
Okay. So with that being said, is there anything in particular in Western history that you would like to focus on?
Most of my research has been focused more towards the Northern Plains Indian Wars era. I did fur trade for a long time. I used to work at a historic site just down the road, Bent's Fort, and I grew up around that as a kid too. So that's probably another reason why I had the Western history. Is we go down there on the weekends in the summer and do stuff. Did fur trade down there because that place just operated mostly during the fur trade era. And then the opportunity came up for me to go to Fort Laramie, and it was one of those I couldn't really pass it up. And Fort Laramie does fur trade all the way up until the frontier closes in 1890. So it's like I got there and I realized, man, I have got a wide area to do all this stuff in. And when I got up there, they wanted me to do fur trade again because I had that experience and background. I told them, I was like, I've been doing fur trade for the last 7-8 years. It's like, I'd like to move up a decade. So the first year is at Fort Laramie. I did a lot in the 1850s. I focused a lot on that. And still a lot of fur trade going on. And really, that's the exciting times. You got fur trade. You got the Oregon Trail stuff going on. And then this past year, I kind of moved up another decade and started focusing in the 1860s and early 70s. So kind of that peak of the Indian Wars where most of the and really important stuff was going on.
Okay. Awesome. Yeah, that's I honestly would have to say that as far as Western history is concerned, I mean, I'm always more about Texas. So,
right,
the settling of Texas and it becoming a state and all that, and
right,
and everything before it, everything just prior to the Civil War and shortly after is kind of what I'm into.
Right. And I studied that for a long time too there. When I was working down at Bent's, we started kind of focusing on some of the stuff that was going on because Texas, things that was going on in Texas was affecting Bent's Fort clear up here when it comes to the terms of the Indian trade. Because the relationship with Comanches, the Texans would make them mad. And so that would cause strain on the relations up north. I got into that and we started kind of focusing on that 1 year. And I got to read into it. And I'd say a good third, well, at one point it was a third. Now it's probably closer to a sixth. A third of my library was just on that Texas history from 1836 to 1846. So that 10 years of the Republic, that's what my library on Texas is mostly on.
Now, this is kind of we can go on and on about this one if you've actually done it, but have you been to the Texas Ranger Museum down here?
I have not. I've been to Texas once, and that was because we got lost in Oklahoma. No, that was one of those things that I've always wanted to travel and go to these museums. I just never had the budget to be able to do it. And so, this past year, me and my hunting buddy, best friend, she kind of likes to do traveling and stuff. So we started kind of traveling around and going to some of the historic sites. So it's like I finally got to Fort Robinson after I was up in Wyoming for 2 years, a 2-hour drive from Fort Robinson. She finally got me up there. Another buddy of mine, he got me up to Fort Phil Kearny. So it was like, yeah, I finally got to start traveling, going and seeing sites. But when I was here in Colorado and I was closer to that stuff, it's like I didn't hardly travel at all and go see that stuff.
Yeah. No, it can be hard. I kind of have a funny story about that. Basically, I'm not native Texan. I just kind of got here as soon as I could. So that's kind of half of everyone's story. But I had to I got a job out here being a teacher. A little bit of my background. I started teaching for 2 years in the middle school. And one of the things they focus on is Texas history in 7th grade.
Right.
So what I decided to do was, prior to teaching my Texas history class, I decided to take a tour of Texas and drag my wife along. And I can tell you just about as happy a person she was when she dealt with that. So she saw so many. We literally went. No, I kid you not, Duke. I went to. And forgive me if you don't know any of these places, but we went to Gonzales. We went to San Antonio to see the Alamo. We went to Dallas, Fort Worth area to see the stockyards. We went to Washington on the Brazos. And we went to Goliad. I mean, those are all the major parts of the Texas Revolution. And so by that time, my wife literally said, "You are never, ever taking me to a historical Texas anything from now on." She's like, "You have covered it for a century. I am done." So, yeah, I mean, and that was our family vacation.
Right.
So she got a huge history lesson, but she wasn't too pleased about it, man.
Yeah, there was a point there where I was planning on doing a trip down through Texas, but it came down to I just couldn't afford to do it because I was going to go down, and I've got a friend that he was a professor at the University at Lubbock. I can't remember which one that is.
Okay.
But he was a history and museum professor there. Down and have him show me some places, but I was going to try to hit Adobe Walls, Walker Creek, Bandera Pass, Plum Creek, all these major battles between the Rangers and the Comanches. And then I wanted to go down to Brownsville, to Palo Alto, which is where the Mexican-American War started. And then the idea was I was going to get my passport and then go across the border and then hit all the Mexican-American War where the Texas Rangers had raised hell through Mexico. But that never happened. It's one of those that when I retire, it might happen.
Yeah. No, that's cool though. But yeah, man, if you ever get the chance, if you come down here, go see the Texas Ranger Museum. That's one of the places that I really did like. I'll tell you what, if you're a gun nut, it's the place to be.
That one is definitely on the list because there's, I think it's down there close to that. They've got that statue of Jack Coffee Hayes.
Yep.
If it hasn't been removed yet.
I haven't heard anything about it, but
okay.
Anything could happen, I guess.
I don't think Texas would let that one go anywhere anytime soon.
Well, it's okay. They're already changing the name of Fort Hood to something else. I kid you not, they are.
I'm not surprised.
Yeah, I mean, but that's federal. It's a little different, but at the same time, right. It's in Texas, and they're going to change it. So,
yeah,
but yeah. So do you do any competitive shooting, Western or otherwise, or have you done any?
I got very serious into getting into modern long range shooting, and then it never precipitated out because I could never find a place to go do it at that wasn't several hour drive away. Because the rancher I was working for up in South Dakota, he was wanting to get into it, and so I kind of followed suit and got into it and wound up blowing about $2,000 between a gun, scope, and reloading setup. And I proved to a lot of people that you can buy a right out of the box Savage 6.5 Creedmoor, and it's just as accurate as one of those high dollar ones that you buy that's custom made. Although I gotta say the Aki trigger, I hate the Savage Aki trigger. Just a side note.
Okay.
But yeah, I seriously thought about getting into that. At one point in time, I thought about getting into the cowboy action shooting, SASS, that stuff. But I went to a shoot with a friend, and I didn't shoot because I couldn't afford the ammunition at that time, and I didn't have enough guns to do it. And I went to that, and I seen how much ammo they would go through in one shoot, and I realized, I really couldn't afford to do that one. So I didn't get into that. I thought about getting into IPSC, and then I realized they used to blow even more money on ammunition. So it's like, I'll just shoot my own competition with me at the local range, and it won't cost me more than a few bullets.
There you go. Yeah, well, I mean, as far as long distance wise, never done the modern long distance. I've done Sharps long distance, but I haven't done the Quigley matches or anything like that up north.
Right.
Mostly out to about 400 yards is normally how far we shoot. But yeah, I've been thinking about doing the modern shooting too. But I mean, that's a great way to get the bug. But if you ever want to get into SASS a little bit more and have time, I know it does. It takes money, and you have to have time. And quite frankly, I sometimes don't have time to do it either.
Right. Thing is,
So,
now I've got the guns, and I've got. I thought about getting into it. The first year I was up in Wyoming because there was actually a group over in Colorado that wasn't that far away. It was only about an hour away, and then the ammo drought hit and could not find 45 long Colt anywhere.
mm-hmm.
So I decided not to get into it then either. But I take that back. There was one I did get into seriously, and that was trap shooting. I did trap shooting for 2 seasons because I won the Class C Dakota League championship. And that's because the guy in front of me won an award, and in that one you couldn't win more than one award per season. So I actually was second place, but I got first place because the other guy, he got the best award of the thing. So yeah, that one I shot, and that one was free because the rancher I worked for said as long as I helped him reload the shells, he would provide the shells for me to shoot. So I had a lot of fun with that one.
Okay.
But
awesome.
We tried the sporting clays, and I'm no good at sporting clays.
Yeah, I think I tried shooting clays once, and then I just said, forget this. So
yeah, well, I did really good with the trap on handicaps. I was great on the handicaps. The 16-yard one, I couldn't hit the broadside of the barn. I don't know why, but I couldn't hit the broadside of the barn at 16 yards. And, well, hindsight is probably because I was using a full choke. But, yeah, we went to my boss took me to the big tournament they had at Pierce, South Dakota. I think it was Willow Creek Sporting Clays. And you're talking a couple hundred people being at that thing. And, I did my shooting. I wasn't that great. And the boss, about a week afterwards, he went and looked up the scores, and him and I were in the bottom 2, and he was dead last.
Oh, no.
And so he kept razzing me when we go to the trap club and shoot there, and he kept razzing me about how we was at the bottom, and I looked at him that the last time he brought it up, I looked at him, I said, I still beat you. He never brought it up again.
Yeah, it's kind of like that. If you're getting chased by a bear, you don't have to outrun the bear. You just have to outrun the person who's slower than you.
Exactly.
Yeah, it does get like that. You don't have to be the top shot. You just have to be better than the person who's always coming in last. So
right.
That's awesome. Yeah. What is your most prized, favorite, or interesting firearm that you personally have right now?
Oh, my most prized one would be my Uberti Patterson that sits in the safe. It's the only safe queen I will never part with. And the reason it's a safe queen is just because you can't get parts for it anymore. And the springs have been known to break pretty regular in those. So it's like, I'll just leave that one in the safe until they start making parts again for it, or I can find spare parts for it. Then I might take it out and shoot it. But then my favorite one would have to be my 1911.
Okay.
Because that thing, it just goes everywhere with me. I've wanted a 1911 for a lot of years, and I wound up buying a Smith & Wesson SD40, and I like that gun a lot. It worked fine until the mag release button went bad on it, and then I thought, I'll just sell it because I couldn't get parts for it. But the day I bought my 1911, it was like that was my go-to gun.
Got it. Yeah, I saw you. I think that was one of the first long form videos I saw was when you did the Patterson.
Yeah, that's been quite a few years ago, but I got a really good deal on that Patterson, and the guy that sold it to me, I'm thankful he sold it to me for the price that he did, because I walked away with that one for about 4 Franklins.
Okay.
And,
yeah, that's a steal.
Yeah, and that was before they were starting to jack the price sky high on Gunbroker. That was a time where you could get one on Gunbroker for about $550 to $600.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that was the winter of 2015 or the winter of 2016. I don't remember. But then after that, I bought a Pieta Patterson because I thought, I'd like to have one that I could shoot and I spent $600 on that thing, and that was the biggest waste of money.
Why do you say that?
Well, there's the old saying that Colt, and I don't know if it's true or not, but they say that Sam Colt personally tuned every one of the Patterson revolvers. That's why it took him so long to make it. And I'm of the opinion that nobody in Italy can tune them either, because when I got that gun, nothing was fitted. It was just thrown together.
Okay.
The bolt stop would not go into the notches on the cylinder at all. It had never been filed to fit. It was out of time. The hand had never been filed to fit. So I spent about 3 weeks with it on the bench taking it apart, and I just sit there every night and work on parts. And I finally got it to where it was operational. And then the wedge decided it was not going to stay in place and constantly fell out. And I was at work at Bent's one day, and everybody asked me about the Patterson. So I was always taking it out and showing people. Well, at one point in time, I took it out to show somebody, and the wedge fell out. I didn't know it.
Oh.
I put it back in the holster. And then somebody else later that day asked me, and I pulled it out, and the barrel was still in the holster, and the rest of the gun was in my hand. And the guy laughed, and he's like, "You got that 9-inch holster for that short a gun?" And I was like, "No, part missing." So I spent several hours looking for that little bitty wedge in a gravel plaza.
Oh, no.
And I finally found it, and I was fuming that day. And so I went into the blacksmith shop because it was slower and slow because for whatever reason Google had our hours wrong. So between 4 and when we closed, we didn't have any visitors. So I sit in the blacksmith shop and I took a ball peen hammer and I started swaling on that wedge until I got it to where it wouldn't really go in very easy into that slot. And then I took that ball peen hammer and I hammered it into the slot and never fired that gun again because I could never get the barrel off to load it.
Oh, wow.
So that's my $600 prop.
Does the cylinder even turn?
Yeah. In fact, surprisingly, it does. So it's like if it had the loading lever on it, I could shoot it. I just wouldn't ever be able to clean it.
Yeah.
But the other day I was on a chat with Garrett and I was playing with it and I wiggled it and it finally popped back out. So, but it goes back in tight. I don't know how long that'll work, but for whatever reason, Pieta had made the wedge with really soft metal. So, but the first time I took that out, it was on my birthday. And I took that out to the range and I shot 15 rounds to film a video with it. And I come home to edit that video. And by the time I bleeped out all the curse words that I'd used with that thing, it was a Morse code video. Beep, 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 beep.
Oh. Yeah. No, that's great. So I guess you published that video then?
No.
Okay.
I have never published it. I edited it and it's on the computer. I've got it somewhere, but Garrett's tried to talk me into uploading it. It's just like, no, I'm not gonna. I will upload a video on a gun that I don't mind promoting, but I'm not going to promote those. And plus, right now the price on them, it's just like it's not worth it to buy one.
Okay.
And the only reason I keep it is because for living history, if I'm wearing it, I don't care if that gets beat up because it's not that great of a gun. Whereas my Uberti Patterson, even though the finish on it is in rough condition, the gun itself is in really good condition. I want to keep it that way. So that's my trade-off. That's the only reason I haven't sold it yet.
I gotcha. Yeah. No, that's interesting. Yeah, because I've heard mixed things about the Patterson. Been thinking about getting one myself, but the price obviously gets into it.
Right.
The Western Shooting Sports, they really don't allow that because it only takes 5, I believe.
Yeah.
And you can only load 5, and if you were to load 5, if I'm not mistaken, you'd be on a live round technically.
You can lower the hammer between cylinders. There's no safety on that Patterson.
Yeah.
And there's also no forcing cone either. So that was one of the other reasons that had me concerned when my gun was out of time is there's no forcing cone. If that don't line up, the gun goes kaboom. But the Patterson, it's one of those that you buy it if you're going to buy it, it's for historical purposes. It's not really going to be to shoot a lot.
Okay. Yeah. No, that's cool though. Awesome. And you still have that gun, and you still have that video on your channel, I assume.
Yeah. I still got the U-Birdie, still got the video out there on that one. And that one, that U-Birdie had never been fired until I fired it.
Okay.
And I put 15 rounds through it. And I'm like, you know what? I'm not going to push this. I'm not going to stress it. Because I've got a friend that's got the exact same model, and he used his for living history, and he broke all the springs in it. So it's I'm hoping one day he'll sell it to me, because if you take the time, you can modify Pieta parts to work in it. But he's of mindset, he's like, no, he's not going to part with his either.
Yeah. What so kind of move. I don't want to keep you longer than the hour, but I mean, we're gonna go over, but I'll try.
That's fine with me. I ain't got anything else going on tonight. So
no, you're good, man. I mean, like I said, Santee and I went for 2 hours. That's what ends up being fine. I just want to keep it moving though, so we don't stay stagnant.
Right.
So what are, and you may have already talked about this. I think you said you obviously want to retire with your leatherworking business, but as far as the impact of the Western niche, YouTube, shooting sports, living history, otherwise, what are some things that you would like to make an impact on concerning those?
Oh God. Well, the biggest thing, is trying to dispel myths. And I think that's, every historian has to fight with that. And when it comes to the shooting sports, there's no exception. There's the myth out there that the Remington was the best gun of the Civil War. And, the reproductions are better than what Remingtons come out in the Civil War, to be quite frank. But yeah, it's just, try to dispel a lot of those myths. That's the big thing. And not just towards the guns, but myths in history in general. Just kind of set the record straight. And Hollywood is to blame for about 90% of that. Because watch Jeremiah Johnson, then actually go read the history books, and you find out that things didn't really work that way.
Kind of staying on that, you got me curious now. What is the most common, dumbest myth you think is out there?
Oh God!
That you are actually actively fighting or have fought?
The big one is that every mountain man carried a Hawken rifle when they were trapping beavers, and it's like, no, the Hawken rifles at that time were rare. Garrett had the numbers on that, and I've got the same book too, but it's like there was 2,500 Hawkins made during their entire run for 20 some years. And so they weren't very common. Not that they weren't out there. There were men that have them, and there's noted men that have them. Jim Bridger had one, Kit Carson, Tom Tobin, a lot of those big names during the Mountain Man era. But a lot of those guys got them after they left the mountains, after they quit trapping and were doing other things, either the late 1840s or in the 1850s.
Okay.
And so that's probably one of the biggest ones that you have. And then one of my favorite ones up at Fort Laramie is this guy come in and, was so-called expert on the mountain man and told me that every mountain man come to the mountains carried a cap lock. And it's like, no. Cap locks didn't really catch on out in the West until after, way after the Mountain Man era. They didn't start really coming in towards the end of the Mountain Man era. Not saying that they weren't there, but they definitely were not common.
Okay. Yeah. I'll admit I'm not a huge historian on Hawkins or the Kentucky rifle or any sort of flintlock. I'll defer to you and 11 Bang Bang on that. But I mean, do you have a good assortment of those firearms or not so much?
Actually, I don't, but it just comes down to the cost of them. It's like I wanted to get a Hawken, but the only one that I could find that was a decent representation was a kit, and the kit itself was $1,000. And of course, they've gone up quite a bit since then.
Yeah.
And I can do blacksmithing, I can do metal work, I can do leather work, but when it comes to woodwork, don't come looking at me. I can't cut a 2x4 straight if I had the most sophisticated laser guided saw. I would screw it up.
And you would think that would be the easiest thing of all that you said. That's crazy.
God, no, me and power tools and woodworking just do not get along. And I took shop class in high school. I never did those. And then I always wanted to get a Northwest trade gun, which was the most common gun that you would see out in the fur trade era. And there was a company that made really, really good reproductions. And they had one. I used one out at Bent's Fort when I do the flintlock demonstrations. It was a shorter one with a walnut stock. I saved up my money, and I was going to put an order in with a guy that made it. And I went to his website, and it said that he had deceased and they were no longer taking orders. And so that one went out the door. I wound up spending that money on a Brown Bess musket. And that's the only Patterson that I really liked for flintlock wise. But the one Hawken I've got is a modern kind of a Thompson. It's actually an invest arm style, but it looks just like a Thompson center Hawken. That's the only cow block long arm that I have.
Okay. Yeah, I had an inline muzzle loader that I bought a long time ago. Good little gun, but obviously nothing historically accurate there.
Right.
And I do have, not Mountain Man specific, but I do have a Gallagher carbine replica.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. I've never shot it.
I guess say the replicas are more rare than the originals.
Yeah. They're made by Irma Work.
Right.
And then Irma Work stopped making them, and I don't even remember what the serial number is on it. I'd have to look at it. But yeah, the only person that I've seen that has another Irma Work, and I'm sure I'm misquoted on this, but right now I think Cap and Ball TV is the only one I've seen who has a Gallagher carbine.
Right.
But yeah,
I've got to handle an original Gallagher. Because where I work at, they have one in collections up there because the 11th Ohio volunteer cab that was stationed at Fort Laramie during the Civil War were armed with those. And it's surprising how many carbines and guns were made during the Civil War that you just don't hear about today. But guns blew up during the Civil War. It's like, holy, not blown up physically, but I mean, the production of them, the different styles that was out there.
Yeah. What okay. So now that you mentioned Laramie, you mentioned the 11th Ohio Volunteer. I've got to ask you the question: have you gotten in touch with the 11th OVC channel?
Oh yeah. I've actually met Steve. That he's the main face over there, and real nice guy. Does great content, and Steve is one heck of a historian and knows his stuff. And so, yeah, when people ask me for info, it's like I'm usually going to reference one of his videos if he has a video on that subject.
Yeah, he does great work. I do follow him. He doesn't put out content that often, but the content he does put out, it's good.
Yeah, it's one of those quality over quantity, and the quality is there.
Yeah. No, that's awesome. So kind of okay. So you got more connections there. That's cool. Didn't know you had that, but yeah, that's awesome. This is gonna be. You probably answered this once again already, but if someone wanted to find you, other than your YouTube channel, where would you like people to find you online if they wanted to look for you?
Oh, probably Instagram, because like I said, that's where I do most of my business promotion stuff. The Facebook page I've got for my YouTube channel. I don't post over there anymore. I basically just use the chat to take holster orders for people that don't want to email. But yeah, the Instagram, I stay active over on that. Not as much as I do on YouTube, but I post stuff over there, especially on my leather work. In fact, I just yeah, I don't know if I posted this or not, but I've been working on a project here, kind of a ladies' jewelry box project that if I haven't posted, it'll be posted here pretty soon. And then, you know, almost all the holsters, especially if I got something new to offer, it shows up over there.
Do you have a Patreon, Buy Me a Coffee, any of those crowdfundings?
No, I did Patreon early on, and I was only making like $2 or $3, and by the time they took out their fee, I think I was getting like 50 cents a month.
Yeah.
So I wound up shutting that down here because I quit paying attention to it because I wasn't getting any attention, and then some guy had been subscribed to me for like 3 years on that and was giving me $2 a month, and I'm like, I can't really send that back.
Yeah.
And it's like, so I wound up shutting everything down on that. It's still there. I just don't do anything on it. And I tried to do a GoFundMe to fund a film project that I was going to do on the history of the Colt handguns, because that was in the plan was that was going to be a big project. You know, I was going to go back east, and now was when I was going to do a lot of travel. When I was going to travel back east, go to the Colt factories, Patterson. So I had a friend that was working at the National Historic Site where the Patterson factory was at. And they have a museum there with probably the most Pattersons you ever seen in one room. And then, you know, go up to Connecticut to the Connecticut Historical Society because they have all the Colt collection. Then go to the Colt factory, and then go through Texas and a bunch of other places to film that. But I got $40 in donations on that, and that dried up. And I was like, you know what? I'll buy a book. And I bought the book Colt Patterson Pistol Variations.
Okay.
And I'm glad I bought that when I did because that book went sky high right after I bought it.
Yeah. Now it's kind of interesting how YouTubers kind of develop their following, get their people that support them. And, you know, I know that there's some people that do use Patreon and all that. Some people don't. But, you know, it's always nice to have some people that really care about your content and help you out. So.
I actually had gotten more donations and contributions to the channel through the YouTube Super Chat.
Oh, really?
Yep.
Yeah, that's yeah, I can't say that has been a thing for my channel, so I wouldn't know what that's like.
And the thing was, is I didn't even know that my channel was compatible for that until I was sitting there one day and then somebody sent me $50. I'm like, oh, wow.
There you go.
So, yeah, every once in a while, somebody will send me one on the chat, but it's one I'll say it's just, and I tried to promote the Patreon stuff when I was trying to do more videos so that I could keep doing those videos because, like I said, that stuff was getting expensive.
Right.
Because I dumped, when I decided I was really going to get into it, I dumped $1,000 into a camera. I dumped $100 into a tripod, a couple $100 into a microphone, a couple $100 in video editing software. And I never made any of that back.
Yeah. It's kind of hit or miss, you know?
Yeah. And I never made enough back to cover most of the ammunition that I used in videos either.
Hey, what you do for your audience, man,
Right.
That's what it's all about.
So that's when I turned my focus to the leather because I could dump $200 into leather and turn that around to $2,000 right quick. So I was like, yeah, that's the more interesting business.
There you go. What so in your opinion, we're getting down to the end, people. I know we've been on here a while, but how do people get more content or experience on the Old West in your opinion? Are there any books or movies you recommend to people?
If you're one that wants to watch a movie, because Hollywood does generally a terrible job of telling history as it happened. And in the words of Werner Herzog, you know, you got to make a good story, whether it's true or not. And that's paraphrasing.
Yeah.
So Yeah, you're not going to see me recommend The Revenant for the history of Hugh Glass. That's just it's bad. But if you're hell bent on a movie, probably one of the best ones I've seen come out of Hollywood, and they still get a lot of stuff wrong, is Son of the Morning Star.
Okay.
And you can find it here on YouTube. That's probably my number one. And, I think it was Garrett asked me to give it a rating of, 1 being terrible and 10 being great, and it's got a 7.
Okay.
And one of the reasons why it was so great is because the uniforms and stuff in there, they actually got reenactors in on that.
Okay.
And so a lot of the uniforms were great. And most of the history was okay. The next one I'd say is probably the Gods and Generals and Gettysburg.
Mm-hmm.
And again, that's because the reenactors were there.
Right.
But even that one, I'd only give like a 6 out of 10. Because I don't think they really they don't portray some of the folks in there quite like they really were.
Mm-hmm.
But showing what happened, it's not bad.
Yeah.
And then Outlaw Josie Wales for a fictional story is probably my favorite.
Yeah.
Probably the bottom on the list for coming to historical accuracy is John Wayne's The Comancheros. Because Texas in 1848, they didn't have Winchester 92s or 73 single action armies.
Oh my God. Yeah. Well, leave it up to the biggest and most famous actor to make the most mistakes there, and people believe it.
Don't get me wrong, that was one of my favorite movies as a kid. I still like it today, but for historical accuracy, it's junk.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that's some good. You actually kind of gave me some ideas, because I think I know there's a book out there called the Son of the Morning Star.
Yeah, and that book it's not probably the greatest if you're looking for something on a scholarly level.
Okay.
It's not bad. But if you're looking for a good book on Custer, Custer's Luck has been one of my favorite reads on Custer.
Okay.
And then other book-wise, I mean, I could spend the next 3 hours listing off books. There's a lot of them out there.
Yeah.
But yeah, there's some easy reads out there. If you're looking for something on a mountain, man, I know Blood and Thunder, people say a lot of good things about it, but I had the pleasure and the honor of working with Kit Carson's great grandson, and that was not one of his recommended books on the history of Kit Carson.
Oh, geez.
But yeah, there's lots of good books out there. And I'm one of those that I prefer reading the first-hand accounts, because the first-hand accounts are usually more easy to read.
Mm-hmm.
And you got to take some of that with a grain of salt, especially if they write it 40 years after the fact.
Yeah.
And also some of them, like Jim Beckworth, his autobiography. Jim Beckworth was a notorious liar.
Yeah.
So when you read his book that he wrote about himself, you got to take it with a lot of salt on that one. But for the most part, diaries and stuff, those are great. And anybody that really wants to read like Oregon Trail stuff, I highly recommend the Covered Wagon Women series, because those are the diaries that women wrote as they were going across the trails there. Not just the Oregon Trail, but a lot of different trails. And that's as close to right there in their daily life as you can get, because they were writing it as it happened.
Awesome. I think that's some good stuff. Okay, you probably already said it, but what's your favorite Western movie and why?
Oh, my top two would have to be, like I said, Son of the Morning Star and Outlaw Josie Wales. And Son of the Morning Star, reason for that is historically accurate. It's one of the better ones.
Okay.
And I think Gary Cole did an excellent job of portraying Custer. He captured the essence of Custer.
Okay.
the is it Patricia Arquette captured the essence of Libby Custer. I mean, the casting was beautiful, absolutely beautiful on that. And then Outlaw Josie Wales. I think that's one of the first American-made movies where you see them using actual cap and ball revolvers that aren't converted old Colts that are modified to look like cap and balls.
Yeah, and I think he uses walkers, correct?
Yeah, he's got walkers, 1860 Army, I think it's a 49 Wells Fargo model he carries.
Mm-hmm.
And you see third model Dragoons. You see the muzzleloader rifles and carbines. He's got a Sharps in there that he uses with a scope on it.
Yep.
The only real problem I had with that is they have the later 1800s Gatling guns.
Okay.
The Gatling guns of the Civil War would have been a little bit different than those.
Right.
But you're not going to find a functioning Civil War era Gatling gun. I don't think there's too many of those still in existence.
Yeah, I think that's also kind of where it comes down to the movies on a budget, and there's only so many they can buy, and what they can buy is what they got,
Right.
But yeah, no, I'd say my favorite Western movie definitely is The Wild Bunch, just because it's literally about people just raising hell.
Yeah, that one is pretty good. That one and The Professionals, I do like.
Yeah, I'd say The Professionals was kind of a hidden gem. I didn't know about it, and then I watched it, and yeah, it's good.
I really like that one, but yeah, the Wild Bunch, that is a good one, and that's kind of in that era where Westerns started getting a little more gory.
Yep. Yeah, I think the director, and I think I told Snapper this, but I think the director, one of his major things was he wanted the actors to know what it was like to be shot, basically.
Was it Sam Peckinpah that did that one?
He was in it. I know that. I think.
Right. Because I can't remember if that was a Peckinpah film or not, but yeah, as funny as I didn't watch that until probably 2-3 years ago.
Yeah.
And it's one of those, and I'm one of those guys, I'll put on a movie and then I can't sit still long enough, so I'll start doing something and I'll listen to it in the background. And audio-wise, I can tell you what's going on, but I couldn't tell you what's going on the screen.
Yeah. Okay, last question before we do the audience Q&A. If you could choose one gun from each category, what would it be? Your rifle, your pistol, and your shotgun. What would it be?
Oh, God. Do we want to put kind of like a time era in on that?
Well, I mean, you can make this as long. It's your question here, so
right.
Make it as long and interesting or short and sweet as possible.
It would be one for the rifle. It would come down to between the Spencer and the 66 Winchester. And I'm saying that because, I've been, like I said, kind of focusing my living history towards the later 1860s, early 1870s. And so those were the two more common ones. And the Henry was in there as well. But, Spencer, a little harder hitting. But, with the Winchester, you have had a few more rounds. And with 66, it was definitely a little easier to load. Handgun-wise, it's going to be down to a 51 Navy Colt or a 60 Army Colt, one of the two for that time period. Of course, after that, single action Army is king. But shotgun-wise, it's like at that time period, there were so many double barrels around. And I've worked the 87 shotgun, and I love shooting it, but that's not one I would want to carry.
Yeah.
All the time because it's such a pain to load. So for shotgun wise, it's going to be a double barrel or a 97 because I do love my 97s. I've got one in 12 and I now have one in 16. And the 16 I got to do a little work on. It was funny is when I got that one, Garrett picked that one up for me at an auction. When I got a hold of that one, the action was smooth and flawless, but the hammer had wore out and it was dropping. So it slam fire about 3 times out of 5 on its own. And so I got in there and I filed the sear out and I got things cleaned up. And cycled it, and it wasn't slam firing anymore, but the pump, I got a screw or a pin that's out of alignment somewhere because now it requires an act of Congress to run the pump.
You made your own problem.
Yeah, and I think I tracked it down the other night. I think I know what screw it is, but I got to take the whole thing apart to get it lined back up right. But I noticed there was a little line of slivers of metal, little hairs of metal, like steel wool coming off that. So I think I know what screw is out of whack.
Well, they don't call the 97 for it being made in 1897. They call it the 97 because it falls in 97 pieces.
You ain't kidding.
You know.
Holy Moses, that thing's got a lot of parts in it.
The first time I had that thing apart, I think I left it apart for about 3 months before I decided to put it back together.
I had that 16 apart and back together in one night, but I had to watch a YouTube video. It took me probably 2-3 hours. The 16 gauge I got's made in 1901 or 1902. I don't remember.
Okay.
So it's one of the first runs. And then the 12 gauge that I got was made in the 1930s. So it's the one that's got the tabs where you can do the mag dump on it.
Awesome.
And that gun is smooth. I love that one. And that was one that I also got from Garrett.
Gotcha. Well, I think that's all the questions we have for me. Let's see what we got in the comments section. I got one from Hardy. He says, "Where do you see living history going from here?" We talked a little bit about that. What do you think is the future of it?
That's one of the things is unfortunately, it's kind of a dying thing. There's not the interest today that you saw back in the 80s and the 90s and even in the 70s, really. A lot of my friends that do the living history stuff, and granted, though, the stuff that I do is not so much as reenactment as what it is just straight living history, because we're not reenacting a specific event like a battle. We're portraying the day-to-day lives of people back in the day. When I was down at Bent's Fort, most of the time I was a trapper or a trader. So I'd be just doing that. I'd be cleaning traps, cleaning guns, or I'd be in the trade room, talking about business, doing record books and such. When I got up to Fort Laramie, first year I was up there, I portrayed, most of the time when I was just doing my day-to-day stuff, I portrayed the post trader. So I was operating in the store there. Then, of course, I did some of the soldier stuff, but like I said, not really reenacting a specific event. We was just doing the day-to-day stuff. So we just call it living history. And when we do a special event, have a bunch of them together, we called it an encampment, not really a reenactment. But to kind of get back on the question is, I don't see a lot of new young volunteers. Most of them are guys that have been doing it since the 80s and the 90s when they were young. When I was down there at Bent's Fort, I could probably count, I know I could count on one hand, maybe two hands, the number of young folks that we had. And there just wasn't a lot of them. And up at Fort Laramie is kind of getting in the same thing. The youngest folks that we have are employees, seasonal employees, or, kids of reenactors that come out and do it. So unfortunately, there's not enough up there. And I think it comes down to is that, a big portion of it is there's just, one, not the interest, and two, they don't teach it in schools like they used to. It's not a focus in schools anymore. Here in Colorado, and I know up in Wyoming, most of your history, state history, is being taught in the 4th grade. And my best friend at Bent's Fort, before he died, him and I had that conversation. And he said, why try to teach history to a 4th grader? They're not old enough to have any history. They can't associate with it. Mm-hmm. And when I was, in school, and that wasn't too far separated away, we learned in 8th grade.
Yeah.
We did a whole semester in 8th grade on Colorado history. Of course, in my school in 8th grade, we never went on field trips and stuff. It was all out of the book and in the classroom. But yeah, it's unfortunately it's kind of a thing that's going away, and when you do find kids that are interested, a lot of times they don't stick around for a lot of it too because they want to come out and play for a weekend. And you come out to one of my living history things, we're going to make you work. Down at Bent's Fort, we used to do, and I don't know if they still do this or not, but we used to do living history encampment classes. So people would pay to come out and learn how to do all that stuff. And, one of the classes they made me partake in because I hadn't done it at that site before. But one of the parts they had me help teach on that was skinning beavers. We got dead roadkill beavers or confiscated beavers that were illegally harvested from the state. They donated them to us. And then we'd use them in these classes and skin them out and stuff, And so, yeah, you got, right knee deep in the blood and the guts with it. And up at Fort Laramie, when they used to do that stuff, they put you in the Army blues, them blue wool things on a 90-degree day, and you were out marching. Maybe not with a rifle in full gear, but you were out there with a broomstick marching in formation. And I tell you what, on days like that, it's miserable, but for me, it's fun. I enjoy doing it. Although I've kind of gotten up there at Fort Laramie where I prefer portraying the officer because that's more interesting to me than just being a lowly private sitting out there.
Yeah.
And to be honest with you, the military history is not as interesting to me so much as what was going on the civilian wise. And really for me, commerce is my big focus.
Okay.
The historical commerce, trade going on with the natives, because that's where everything kind of ties in together. And the soldier history is just, these immigrants from Ireland or Germany got thrown out in the West because somebody grabbed them off the boat, told them to sign up, and they go on an adventure. And they come out there and sweep out barracks and shovel out horse stalls. So, but the absolute best part of that, though, is getting to fire that 12-pound mountain howitzer. I don't mind dressing up as a private for that.
I think the coolest I've seen was a full-on battery fire of 12-pounders. And they just in sequence, just boom, boom, boom. It's great. And once you see that in person, I don't care. I know I got some guy. I know we got Snapper. I know we got Garrett. So I know we got some military guys. I don't care who you are. Even if you've been in the military and you've seen some modern pieces go off, when you see that black powder, it's entirely different. You're just like, wow, that is really cool, So
probably the best times when we fire that cannon is when the wind is coming, because we have to fire away from the audience, of course.
Right.
That concussion on that wave can be damaging, clear 20 yards out in front of the muzzle. But what's really cool is when that wind's coming back from the cannon towards the audience, because then that smoke blows across them, and then they get to experience that smell, that sulfuric smell, that black powder. Mm-hmm. And that's what really, really connects them. So you get the loud boom. And of course, we're firing down in the proximity of two long concrete buildings. So that boom just echoes right back in. Mm-hmm. But that's probably one of the best visitor experiences is to get to see that thing go off. And that's probably our number one program. Okay. It could be 110 degrees. And I'll have 40, 50, 60 people lined up in front of me to listen to me talk, or one of my coworkers talk about that cannon and see it go off, when you couldn't get 20 people to sit down in an air-conditioned room and listen to a butterfly talk.
Yeah, that's awesome. We got another question here from Tuco the Rat. By the way, hello, Tuco. Look forward to interviewing you. What are you guys using for black powder? I think what he means is, who are we getting it from?
So I put in, when I was going to get serious on doing the videos and stuff, I put in an order from Graff & Sons for GoX, and this was back before prices went up. And I bought I think I bought 20 pounds because that was what it took for the price for the hazmat feed equal out to about what you paid for on the shelf at a store. And so I'm still sitting on a lot of that because I didn't do a lot of videos. And then percussion caps, you know, I went to Cabela's one day. They were trying to get rid of their old stock, so they marked them half price. So I bought 1,200 percussion caps. Out at Fort Laramie, you know, we had an issue trying to get a hold of powder because GoX closed its doors for a short time. And Estes Rockets has taken over that, and they're trying to catch up. But I know 11 Bang Bang, them guys are making their own powder. I considered making my own powder, but then I got to thinking for no more than what I've been doing and using it, it was not worth the effort to do that. But with the prices that are right now, I would definitely, if I didn't have the amount of powder that I've got now, I would definitely really consider making my own.
Okay. Yeah, for me, I'd say I have an old can of GoX that I got off of a friend. Contrary to you, Duke, I don't shoot as much black powder probably as you do, so I got a lot of smokeless, but I do have some cans of GoX that I've saved up. By the way, our comment section is getting quite inappropriate. And
oh, geez.
Yeah, so I'll try and find the correct questions here, but I hope that answers your question, Tuco. Thank you. And he's got another one too. I'll bring it up here. Do you know if Patreon allows more gun content than YouTube does not, like things like modifications and stuff? Because if you don't know, do you know who Tuco the Rat is?
I've seen him pop up, and I think he's commented on my channel a time or two. But to be honest, it's like I don't pay much attention to YouTube, to be honest.
Yeah. Tuco does a lot of stuff that has to do with fast draw. And he also does a lot of stuff that has to deal with making a race gun. And, you know, forgive me if I got you on the wrong, Tuco, but from my knowledge on your channel, that's kind of what you talk about a lot. So he talks a little bit about what he's done to modify. He never shows it, at least to my knowledge. So I think what he's asking is, does Patreon, if he were to do something like that, would Patreon allow it? And I think the short answer is yes.
So the last time I did anything on Patreon, the only way to really put video content up there was to upload it on YouTube. And if you wanted to be Patreon exclusive, you put it as unlisted and then put the link on Patreon. So I haven't messed with it that much. So I really can't honestly say here lately.
I think Patreon's done some modifications to how long the videos can be.
Okay.
What I do with Patreon videos is I upload them to Google Drive and I share it there.
Okay.
So I think to answer his question, I think yes, you can. You got to make sure that it's not super long, because otherwise your data fills up and you'll never upload it.
Right.
But yeah. Mr. Something off of Western stuff. What's your preferred method for taking down for hogs? I don't know if you've done hog hunting, but sound like the guy that might have.
Actually, that's something I've not done. I looked into doing it a lot. As my dad wanted to do it before he kind of got to where he can't get around as good. But I would looked into doing it, and there was a place that I found down in Texas that, you know, they only charge you $300 a hog. You come down and shoot all you wanted, and I was going to do that. And then a guy from Texas come down to Bent's Fort, and I was talking to him about it, and I told him, I was like, yeah, I looked into this place where you pay, and he says, you pay? He says, I'll pay you. You bring your dad, and he says, I'll give you $5 for every hog you kill. And, you know, we talked a little bit, but it never wound up working out. So I never really got to do hog hunting, but I think if I was to do that, I'd want an AR platform, probably 6.5 Grendel. Because you've got the capacity, and 6.5 Grendel, that round has some knockdown power to it. And if I didn't have that option, then I'd take a 12 gauge with a slug.
Okay. I have only gone hog hunting once, and I would say a 308 knocks them down pretty good.
Yeah.
So, yep. That's what I would say. Anything that's, you're looking in the 30 caliber, I've seen does good. I'm sure slugs do great. Can't imagine they wouldn't,
Right.
but there you go. I mean, I
But
hope that
there's
answers.
lots of guys that hunt them with just an AR-15 and standard 223. And there's the one guy on YouTube that hunts them with an own homemade cannon. So
Yeah. Let's find another one that doesn't have to do with anything sexual. Snapper says he's a troll. Kick him off. I unfortunately I'm kind of new to this. I don't know how to moderate, but I'll just avoid the question to that one. Once again, same guy says, how large or what is the size of the cannonballs you guys use for reenactments? He's new to the hobby.
So at reenactments, at least Park Service wise, you cannot discharge a projectile. So when we fire our cannon out there at Fort Laramie, we have a peat moss plug to give us the compression for the boom. Otherwise, if you don't do that, it's just kind of a whoosh, whooshing boom. And that peat moss just disintegrates out in front of it. And in fact, if you go out in front of it, you'll just see kind of a black shadow across the ground. I know at some places they do fire live rounds. They used to, when they trained for the Park Service, fired live rounds. One of my supervisors, I think it was at Bent's Fort, said that they fired canister, which is basically just a bunch of lead balls. And then one of the guys I worked with up at Fort Laramie, when he did the training, they fired a concrete ball that was of the same weight. So that way you got the full effect of the cannon rolling back. And as funny as the story you told on that is the guys that would fire the big Napoleons and the big field howitzers, they'd fire and that cannon roll back about 2 inches. That little 12-pound mountain howitzer firing a 9-pound projectile would roll back 16 yards. And so he said on that one training, he said they got up there and they fired the cannon and the range master yelled stop. And when they yell stop, you freeze in place. And they thought, oh, no, we've done something wrong. No, he wanted to go up and take a picture because here you've got the crew in a perfect formation and there's no cannon. It had rolled so far back.
Yeah. No, I haven't shot much in the cannon reenactments. I fired one dummy round, blank, I should say. They just loaded powder into it, and that was about it. I think it was a 6-pounder.
Right.
But yeah, that was.
And the other thing on the Park Service is you can't do rapid fire. And I know that some groups will do rapid fire offsite, but big thing was years ago is there was a kid that lost an arm, and I do believe he died. Because he was doing a rapid fire. And one of the things, and this has happened historically, is if the person that was ramming didn't sponge it enough, or if the person was supposed to be covering the vent hole didn't keep that sealed, you'd wind up with an ember in there. And this kid went to load, and there was an ember in the back. And as soon as he seated that powder charge, the cannon went off, and he had a full grip on the ramrod, which you don't do. You always hold it with your thumb out. That way, if it does take off, it takes your fingers in your hand and not your whole arm. But he wound up losing his whole arm, and it happened so fast. And supposedly the video is out there somewhere. I haven't seen it, but one friend that did watch it said that you can see that ramrod going, and there's something following behind it, tumbling.
Oh.
And so the Park Service doesn't do that rapid fire anymore. It's when we fire that cannon, it's 10 minutes until we fire it again. Or if we need to fire one again, we move to our second gun.
Yeah. Okay. That's a good reason to wait.
Yeah. There was a group in Canada that did research on it, and they found out that embers will burn in that tube for 8 minutes.
Okay.
8 minutes was the max that they had. So the Park Service standard is 10 for a little extra window of safety. But that's one of the reasons why when I'm ramming, it's like I'm always nervous on that position, ramming that down, because it's like, oh, God, if this goes off, I'm right-handed, and my right hand's going to go down range.
Now, correct me if I'm wrong. Don't they swab the barrel with water? Isn't that part of the routine?
Yeah, they would. And we have done that. The problem is that we found out is we have a lot more misfires because if you get too much water in the back of that cannon, black powder is hydroscopic. It don't take a lot of water, and it soaks through the whole thing, and then it fouls it out. When I worked at Bent's Fort, we had a little 1-inch or 1.5-inch bore swivel gun, and we swabbed it one day, and it had a lot of water in the back because our swab didn't fit the bore quite right. And we went to fire that. It would not go off. And after 3 misfires, we clear the tube, and we got to wait 30 minutes and then clear the tube. But the supervisor, after the second misfire, he pulled the quill out, was getting ready to do the third one. Well, when he pulled that quill out, it was sopping wet. And so he said, this one's ruined. We'll just dump it out and wait our 30 minutes and then come back, and found out that, when we swabbed it, because we was going through the full motion, when you swabbed it beforehand, it was too wet. But afterwards, especially if we're doing a repeating firing, we definitely use water after it's fired to clean it out and, make sure that there's nothing in there hot.
Okay. Next question is from Hardy again. Got any good recommendations for vendors of historical clothing accoutrements? It seems like there's a lot of Old West clothing that is more modern than Western, not historical.
So if you're looking for military stuff, Quartermaster Shop, for the people that's on a budget, they're not terrible. Not the greatest, but they're not terrible. In fact, most of the stuff we use up at Fort Laramie comes from the Quartermaster Shop. In fact, my Dragoon uniform, I have a late 1850s Dragoon uniform, and that one's from Quartermaster, and it's not bad. If you want to spend the higher dollars, there are the little individual companies out there. Sharon Brown, I think she's out of North Dakota or Montana, somewhere up north. She makes some great reproduction military uniforms, but you're going to pay for it. It's good, high quality, but you're definitely going to pay for it. You're looking at $200-300 for a jacket. And I don't know if that's her exact price, but my one friend that ordered one from her, I think that's what he said he paid. For civilian clothing, South Union Mills is probably the best one out there. They've got really good reproduction cloth. They do some sewing machine stitching, but where it's visible, it's all hand stitched. So it's kind of for on a budget, it's the best. A lot better than your Wamaker or one of those other ones that are out there. But like I said, you're going to pay for it. You're looking at probably close to $200 for a pair of pants, $100 for a shirt. But for the quality, that's pretty reasonable price for what you're getting. In fact, if I can get some money saved up, I'm going to buy a 3-piece monkey suit from them and a historically accurate plaid. And I'm looking at about $500 for the pants, vest, and the jacket. Of course, I got a ton of shirts out there where I work at, but it's not cheap, but that's more affordable than some of the others.
Yeah, I can't necessarily speak to that because, there's only one place I go for my clothing, but it's not necessarily historically accurate neither. It's Texas Jacks and down in Fraser.
Yeah, and that's more of the Wamaker style stuff. And I'm trying to think. Scully, I think, is the other company that makes it.
Yeah, Scully.
Yeah.
So most of the stuff I use in my videos, I'm using that. So, but I have a gun belt that is historically accurate. And the boots are pretty good too.
Right.
Everything else is kind of just a mix of Hollywood and whatever anyone comes up with. It's kind of what you can afford. That's good.
Santee had the best saying on that I've got is if you're going to be rolling around in the dirt constantly tearing that stuff up, a $60 Wamaker shirt is better than a $120 historically accurate shirt. Because if you're going to tear it up, you don't want to spend a bunch of money and then ruin it. So it kind of depends on what you're looking at. And if you're on a real tight budget, the Wamaker stuff is not bad. It's just kind of like there's different tier levels, and they're down here, and South Union Mills is up here, kind of thing.
Yeah. Well, do you have any questions of me before we sign off? That's kind of all the audience we have right now as far as questions are concerned.
That's the thing on questions. People ask me if I got questions, and that's when my mind just goes.
Yeah, I got questions for you. I'll ask you later.
Okay.
But yeah. No, anyway, I appreciate your time, Duke. Thank you so much for coming on. I know that this had been in the works for a couple of weeks. And for those of you who have been watching us, you've seen that I've been doing some interviews with some other people to include Snapper and Santee, and I got Mike Bellevue coming up. So that'll be interesting, especially with I'm trying to get him in next week, but we'll see what happens.
Yeah, he's kind of got a lot going on right now.
Yeah, I feel for the dude. You yourself, I think you made a video on what's going on, but I think anyone who has been following the black powder community probably knows by now. That really stinks what he's going through. So I hope that doesn't affect our interview. It may, but we'll see.
But yeah, I wish him all the best. But I can remember I've been subscribed to him for a long time, and I can remember he had a little issue with his local shooting club, and he came out on top with that. And I have the utmost faith that he will come out on top on this. Yeah,
I mean, you can't really watch YouTube without seeing him on here. He's kind of like the Hickok 45 of black powder shooters.
Yeah, and if it wasn't for him, I probably wouldn't have started a channel, because if you watch my videos and you watch his videos, I modeled my channel right after his, what he did. It's kind of one of those things. Well, he's a one-man operation. This is successful for him. I'm going to do the same thing, and it's worked. And I give him full credit for me being able to do what I do, because he set the example that I used.
Yeah. But anyway, once again, I appreciate you coming on. Thank you for putting up with me for almost 2 hours here.
No worries.
The audience, thank you for putting up with the audience as well. I know that not all of them are your viewers; they're my viewers too.
Right.
So feel free to subscribe to Duke Frazier's channel. Once again, his link is in the description below if you haven't already done so, and support him as much as you support me. I appreciate it. I'll be in touch with you, and just give a quick shout out here to Garrett from 11 Bang Bang. Good to see you. Snapper, good to see you as always. And Tuco the Rat, good to see you as well. And I think I got everybody as far as other Western shootists. Santee's not here, but that's okay. So we'll go ahead and call this off, and everybody else have a good night.